The British royal household, no stranger to media storms, was caught off guard by an emotional silence that swept through its halls just moments ago. Breaking headlines revealed that Prince William had cancelled all upcoming plans without explanation, leaving royal watchers bracing for impact. Soon, whispers spread that Princess Charlotte had received tragic news that had shattered both her world and his. At precisely 9:07 a.m. London time, Kensington Palace issued a statement that stunned royal correspondents worldwide. All of Prince William's scheduled engagements for the week, including 2 high-profile diplomatic receptions, were postponed until further notice. No reason was given, only silence. Within minutes, reporters flooded social platforms, desperate for answers. Had something happened to Catherine? Was there a sudden relapse in her condition, or had the king's health taken a turn? The lack of context sparked panic, and inside the palace, the situation was even more tense, with staff immediately instructed to power down external communications. Phones were confiscated, and advisors were pulled into hushed emergency meetings. Senior royal aides, many of whom had weathered the darkest storms from the Queen's passing to Harry's exile, described this moment as uniquely unsettling. One insider reportedly said, "It wasn't chaos. It was a calculated silence. That's what made it terrifying." The public had seen last-minute cancellations before illnesses, protocol changes, security threats, but this was different. There was no visible danger, no health emergency broadcast, no death announcement. Yet William had vanished from public view. Entire royal routes were erased, convoys turned away, and interviews scrubbed from the calendar. As speculation spread like wildfire, familiar theories resurfaced. Was it connected to Catherine's long-standing recovery? Was she being rushed to the hospital again? A security breach? A press leak about Harry and Meghan? Nothing in the public domain explained such a sudden and sweeping reaction. Then came the first unconfirmed leak, not from a reporter, but an anonymous staff member, and what they claimed sent chills through the media. The real reason William cancelled everything was because of Princess Charlotte. Something had happened, something personal, something tragic. No one could explain how Charlotte was involved, but the suggestion alone shifted the focus entirely. Journalists recalibrated their lenses, tracing Charlotte's recent appearances, medical history, and school activity. Was she sick? Had something happened at school? The whisper ignited a frenzy fueled not by politics, but by emotion. The tension only deepened with the most ominous clue of all, William's last known interaction before vanishing. An aide reported seeing him hold his phone to his ear, then drop it onto the table, and, whispering, "I need to get to her now," William abandoned everything: his car, his staff, his briefcase, and ran, signaling to insiders that this was no longer about the crown, but about a father racing to his child. As the whispers grew louder, the full weight of Charlotte's tragedy began to emerge, forcing William into a heart-wrenching choice no parent should ever face. What had seemed like a routine day for Princess Charlotte took a devastating turn. Behind her composed royal smile, she carried a secret sealed in an envelope addressed solely to her. When she opened it, something inside her broke. The contents, never intended for public eyes, altered her future and shook her father to his core. The envelope arrived quietly, no grand royal insignia, no prior warning, nestled among her school materials and delivered by a private royal courier, bypassing all expected checkpoints. Palace protocol remained unusually silent. Not even her personal assistant or nanny had been alerted. The envelope was addressed only to Charlotte, the handwriting unfamiliar, the timing precise. Inside was a handwritten letter, urgent and trembling, from someone she had only known in whispers, a distant royal relative, long removed from the palace's inner circles, exiled not by scandal but by silence. The opening line of the letter said it all: "You have the right to know what I was never allowed to say." Its tone wasn't angry, nor emotional. It was something far worse: calm, reflective, and unflinchingly honest. The kind of truth that sits heavy on a child's chest, no matter how noble their bloodline. It spoke of hidden realities, genetic consequences, and a pattern ignored for generations, warning of a hereditary condition unnamed but devastating, allegedly passed down Diana's side of the family and subtly evident in Charlotte's own medical history. Until that moment, Charlotte had seen herself as any child her age, a little mischievous, sensitive, prone to dizzy spells and lightheadedness, but nothing extraordinary. The letter suggested otherwise. Those were not coincidences, they were symptoms, and they would only intensify with age. She didn't cry or scream immediately, but those who saw her later described a face drained of color, posture collapsed, and footsteps wavering as she left the private reading room. Her eyes, one aide said, were blank, as if something inside her had been erased. Without a word, Charlotte excused herself and then she was gone from view. A message was dispatched to William. "You need to come now. She's not okay." Without hesitation, he abandoned everything, ignoring security protocols and running through the private corridors, driven solely by a father's urgency. William ran barefoot through the private corridors, shouting Charlotte's name before reaching her room. The door was shut, and his knock began soft, then frantic. When it finally opened, the look on his face spoke louder than any press release ever could. The letter Charlotte had received was more than mere information. It was a warning, a burden, a timeline with implications not only for her personal future but for the very lineage of the monarchy. What she discovered was shocking, raising urgent questions about royal bloodlines, family history, and what her future might hold. The House of Windsor has always guarded its medical lineage like a crown jewel, yet Diana's legacy may have carried more than emotional weight, a secret condition that had skipped generations, and Charlotte might now face its next tragic chapter. Within hours of the letter surfacing, whispers had reached the palace's highest medical advisory levels. Though officially unacknowledged, the letter reportedly pointed to a rare genetic disorder undiagnosed, but whose markers had been silently tracked across the family tree, and not just Diana's branch. Behind the glamour of the late Princess of Wales lay a history peppered with unexplained medical concerns, fainting spells, sensory overload, sudden fatigue. At the time, these were attributed to stress, eating disorders, or emotional pressure, but palace insiders now believe they were fragments of something far deeper, something that might finally be surfacing in Charlotte. The condition appeared inherited, something long overlooked. Diana's father, John Spencer, had been known to suffer periodic collapses and chronic nerve sensitivity. No official diagnosis was ever confirmed, and medical records from that era were sparse, most sealed under private orders. Yet patterns existed, and William had perhaps unconsciously seen echoes of them in Charlotte. Even as a toddler, her occasional dizziness, sensitivity to bright lights, and sudden disorientation had prompted quiet concerns from William during routine health checkups. He was reassured it was nothing more than growing pains, but as she grew older, the episodes became more pronounced. Years later, the letter drew a direct line back to Diana, its contents clinical, speculative, and informed. The distant relative who penned it had consulted medical literature, family anecdotes, and private notes from Diana's biographers, connecting dots the palace had long avoided. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to ignite a firestorm. Within 24 hours, royal physicians mobilized. Confidential tests were ordered, specialists were flown in under assumed names, and the operation proceeded in silence. No leaks, no schedules. The urgency was unmistakable. The condition they sought was rare, inherited, often dormant until adolescence, and in some cases debilitating. What shook William most was not the science, but the memory. He had watched his mother struggle in silence, endured the chaos when answers never came, and now, with his own daughter at the center, the nightmare was repeating. He was overheard telling an aide, William's words to an aide were haunting, "It feels like losing my mother all over again. Except this time, I can't let it happen." His fear wasn't just for illness, it was fear of history repeating itself, of a cycle of secrecy now threatening another generation. While doctors worked behind closed doors, a parallel storm was already brewing, threatening public opinion and the palace's image. Behind every headline, a mother grieved in silence. Catherine, still recovering and out of public view, received the news about Charlotte alone, and her response shocked even her closest aides, signaling that this was not just a family emergency but a fight for her daughter's dignity. In the quiet hours of the morning, before William had returned, a single envelope was delivered to her bedside, not by a doctor or royal official, but by a trusted aide, trembling and looking down. Catherine didn't need to ask its contents. She nodded, took the letter, and asked to be left alone. Moments later, the door to her private recovery suite was locked from the inside. Silence followed, no movement, no requests, until a sharp, decisive order rang out: remove every media device from the room. No phones, no news, no noise. Even the television was unplugged. Catherine didn't want updates or analysis, nor the world's opinion on what her daughter now faced. She wanted clarity. And above all, she wanted control over what came next. Control. Aides outside the room described muffled sobs, followed by a loud crash, something thrown, and said Catherine repeated the same phrase over and over, almost like a prayer. She was just a mother, and her child was just a child. This wasn't a burden Charlotte should carry alone. Catherine had weathered storms before, public pressure, invasive tabloids, relentless scrutiny. But this was different. This was her daughter, and the pain wasn't political, it was maternal. Her instincts took over. Within minutes, she issued a directive that bypassed traditional royal protocol. Charlotte was to be pulled from all upcoming appearances, whether public, private, or ceremonial. No more photographs, no smiling in uniforms, no scheduled events. The palace's image machine would stop spinning. Her daughter wasn't a figurehead, she was a girl in pain. But Catherine didn't stop there. For the first time since her own health struggles began, staff witnessed an emotional collapse. She wept openly, uncontrollably. One aide later confessed it was the first time she'd seen Catherine let herself break, not for herself, but for her daughter. And as the tears slowed, resolve hardened in their place. She picked up her personal secure line and placed a direct call to William, her message simple and final. We need to stop everything. Not pause. Not regroup. Stop. William, still sitting beside Charlotte, didn't ask for clarification. He didn't hesitate. He hung up the phone and began erasing his schedule, and he followed through. But canceling his appointments was only the beginning. What followed sent shockwaves through the monarchy. In a bold act of defiance, Prince William split the palace behind closed doors. Against the firm advice of royal courtiers, he cancelled key diplomatic meetings, postponed royal tours, and cleared his calendar indefinitely. His chilling words to staff underscored the gravity. If she goes down, so does everything I stand for. In the days following Charlotte's revelation, the palace expected him to carry on with meticulously choreographed engagements. High-stakes diplomatic meetings, charity appearances, and a major environmental summit meant to reinforce stability. But William had other plans. When advisors tried to review the final itinerary, they met a stone wall. He didn't merely request postponements. He demanded them, crossing out each event until Charlotte's situation was understood, addressed, and emotionally stabilized. Courtiers pleaded, argued, even threatened reputational damage, but William remained unmoved. You want optics? Here's one. Your future king abandoning his daughter while she suffers. Run that in your press briefings. Panic swelled inside the palace. Aides scrambled with alternative ideas. Perhaps Catherine could release a statement, George could appear briefly with his grandfather, or Charlotte's condition could be downplayed with a vague health update. William rejected every suggestion. Backlash was immediate and brutal. Senior officials warned of diplomatic fallout. International partners called in confusion over broken commitments. But William stood firm, reportedly telling those closest to him, if anyone tries to use my daughter's pain for damage control, I will walk away. I will resign from every title if I have to. Within the family, the divide deepened, as some believed he was jeopardizing the institution itself, but William had made his choice. Within the family, opinions were divided. Some believed William was jeopardizing the institution's image for personal emotion, while others, particularly those close to Catherine, defended his stance as overdue and necessary. But William wasn't seeking consensus or permission. He took pen to paper and wrote a direct note to his father, leaving no room for ambiguity. I am not just a prince. I am a father first. If Charlotte is fighting, then I fight with her. Everything else can wait. With that, the lines were drawn. No more interviews, no more tours, no more curated appearances to maintain the illusion of perfection. William had shattered protocol and, in doing so, redefined what it meant to lead with love instead of legacy. Yet while he wrestled with duty and fatherhood, an even deeper layer of tragedy loomed, one tied to Charlotte's dreams. On the brink of collapse, her ambitions stretched beyond palace walls. Dance recitals, science fairs, even the Olympics. Charlotte's childhood had been vibrant with possibility, but in a single, devastating moment, those dreams were shaken. Her condition wasn't just medical, it was limiting, forcing her to confront the loss of the life she had imagined. For months, she had been rehearsing for a royal ballet showcase, her proudest moment yet, but now, the performance she had committed to with fierce dedication hung in jeopardy. Charlotte's determination belied her years. She had trained in secret, astonishing even her instructors with her discipline and grace, practicing late into the evenings, sometimes with Catherine watching quietly from the doorway. It wasn't about attention, it was about passion. This was her world, her joy, her voice. But now that stage would remain empty. After several rounds of tests behind closed doors, doctors delivered their verdict. Charlotte needed serious, extended, uncompromising rest. Overexertion could cause long-term damage. and her condition required strict regulation, no recital, no strenuous activity, and no pressure to meet the impossible expectations of royal life. Not for now, not for a year, possibly longer. The decision landed like a hammer, extracurriculars stripped away, her elite academic curriculum paused, royal training modules halted. A carefully crafted future was suddenly wiped clean. For the first time, Charlotte understood the weight of carrying a legacy and losing control over it. But it wasn't the absence of activities that hurt most, it was the quiet question she whispered one night. Does this mean I can't be queen one day? William, already stretched between duty and heartbreak, took her hand and answered, tears in his eyes, "You'll always be more than a title." Aides later admitted it was the first time they had seen him weep during the crisis. In that moment, Charlotte wasn't a royal, she was just a girl watching her world shrink, seeking reassurance in a sea of uncertainty. Days later, without fanfare, she gave her beloved point shoes to a younger cousin. No announcement, no ceremony, just a quiet gesture of surrender that spoke louder than words. But Charlotte's grief didn't end with her. It rippled through the family, testing loyalties, trust, and the image of royal strength. Amid her suffering, one silence stood out. King Charles and Queen Camilla remained disturbingly quiet. No visit, no call, no message. William, amidst the chaos, clung to the hope that his father would come not as king, not as crown, but as grandfather. He waited through the night. Nothing came. Aides whispered the truth. No plans for a visit, no messages drafted, not even a private note sent. Meanwhile, Camilla appeared hours later at a luxury charity luncheon, laughing with guests, immaculately dressed, smiling for cameras, seemingly untouched by the unfolding family crisis. Camilla's detachment only worsened the storm. When asked by an attendee whether she had reached out to the family, she reportedly shrugged and said, "Children get sick. That's life." The remark, leaked by someone in attendance, detonated across social media. Public backlash was immediate and venomous, commentators calling it cold, heartless, and accusing her of treating Charlotte as collateral damage in the machinery of the monarchy. Inside the palace, tension escalated. William was livid. He had hoped for support not as a prince, but as a son, and asked for discretion, unity, for the monarchy to close ranks around his daughter. Instead, Charles was reportedly preoccupied, focused on constitutional reviews and an upcoming legislative summit in Edinburgh, allegedly replying when briefed, "William has it under control. Let's stay focused on the schedule." William, frustrated, told a close aide, if this were George, they'd be here in a heartbeat. The words were not just a complaint, they were an indictment of favoritism and indifference, a hierarchy that placed duty above family time repeatedly. Catherine, already emotionally raw, reportedly barred Camilla from approaching Charlotte, instructing staff, "We are not turning this into a photo opportunity." The divide deepened. Courtiers urged Charles to make a gesture to repair optics. He declined. The silence from the throne sent a message, leaving William isolated. Yet amid this, Charlotte herself made a decision that stunned even her parents. She requested to release a handwritten letter to the public, part confession, part goodbye, part hope that truth might one day hurt less. The decision was hers alone, deliberate, quiet, unwavering. Days after the media storm intensified, she sat with a blank sheet of paper and wrote in her own words, asking not for approval, but to be heard. Addressed to all the girls like me, the letter shattered walls between royalty and reality. From the first line, the message was clear. This wasn't about thrones or titles, it was about identity, struggle, and the weight of perfection. Charlotte spoke openly of fear, loneliness, and the heartbreak of lost dreams, yet beneath the pain lay resilience. She wrote that strength isn't just showing up, it's knowing when to step back, that bravery sometimes means saying no. One line leaked within hours, "Even princesses have to pause sometimes." The words went viral, igniting social media, inspiring letters from thousands of children and parents thanking her for honesty and courage. Advocates and organizations praised the palace for allowing her voice to remain unfiltered. For once, a royal child wasn't shielded or repackaged, she was seen as she was, vulnerable yet powerful, scared yet strong. The letter closed with a single sentence, a promise that struck millions. "I'll be back when I'm stronger." Promise. It was both a farewell and a vow, a beacon of hope in weeks of uncertainty. Charlotte's letter resonated far beyond the public eye, it shook the institution itself. Advisors who had once treated her condition as a private matter suddenly confronted her unfiltered truth, forcing the monarchy to grapple with questions it had long avoided. As the public embraced Charlotte's courage, The palace faced a sobering reality. What would the future look like without her at the center? In the corridors of power, nothing remained untouched. For William, the pain of this moment began reshaping a new vision of the monarchy, one where love, not legacy, might guide the crown. Whispers of change had already circulated, but after Charlotte's letter, they became waves. Rumors that William was no longer simply postponing duties, but quietly reconsidering the very structure of succession and tradition. For centuries, the line of inheritance had been absolute. Behind palace doors, William began asking questions no heir had dared speak aloud. What if children didn't want it? What if they deserved choice? Sources confirmed that he held discreet meetings with reform-minded advisors, raising concerns about the pressures on royal children and exploring ways to adapt the monarchy to emotional needs rather than rigid customs. All eyes turned to George. At just 13, he was suddenly involved in deeper briefings, ceremonial training, and public engagements once withheld. Some called it a necessary pivot, others premature. Meanwhile, Catherine's influence quietly strengthened. Known for her calm authority, she began championing a modern monarchy rooted in mental wellness, consent, and flexibility, privately encouraging staff to empower the next generation beyond the confines of tradition. For William, everything had shifted not just due to duty or scrutiny, but because of Charlotte. Watching her rise, fall, and claim her voice revealed a clarity he had never felt. He reportedly told a confidant, "Charlotte made me realize what truly matters. Not how the world sees us, but how we protect each other when the world isn't watching." That realization was more than reflection, it was a recalibration. Outwardly, the monarchy remained unchanged, but inside, its foundation was evolving. Behind the gilded crown was a father, a daughter, and a family forever transformed by courage, love, and the truth that sometimes the hardest battles teach the most vital lessons.